Today is Tuesday, July 10th, and the time is 5:30, and we are here in the city of Coppell for the Coppell City Council. There is a quorum present, so I will call the meeting. We'll be moving into executive session. We have adjourned from executive session at 6:17, so please join us in the back, and the work session will start shortly. Okay, sorry that we're running just a hair late. The time is 7:35, so we will move into the regular session. Tonight, tonight we have Father Tim Cherry here for the invocation, and from the Church of the Apostles. And then if you will please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome.
Madam Mayor, thank you. As always, I've been told to keep it under 30 minutes. Last time I was here for the invocation, we had just broke ground on a building, and I'm happy to say, as some of you may have noticed, that it's in full swing. Two things. First, I'd like to particularly thank Chief Oates and Louis Ray Hill of city staff. As some of you know, building projects are always difficult. Church building projects are especially odd. So they have walked with us, and we greatly appreciate it. And finally, I will say, please come and see us. We'd be delighted to show it to you, and I will promise the council that if you come see us on Sunday, we'll be happy to have you. I'll save you a seat, and I will not give you a pledge card. Not the first visit, anyway. Let us pray. Creator God, we thank you for this glorious summer day. We ask your blessing on our city council, our city, and all of our residents. Guide this evening's discussions and deliberations for the common good of all. We ask for wisdom to use our resources rightly and justly, and we offer our gratitude for the countless blessings we enjoy in Coppell. In your most holy name we pray. Amen. Thank you.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Mr. Bijou, would you like to go up front? Judge Landwehr, please come down. And so, we welcome our newest council member, Bijou Matthew.
Hello. All right. This is always difficult when I have to hold one thing and then the other. If you'll raise your right hand, please. I, Bijou Matthew, do solemnly swear to faithfully execute the duties of City Council, Place 6 of the City of Coppell, State of Texas, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God. You're official. Thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you all for coming. I do appreciate it. You all showing up here. I also want to thank Dr. Marvin Franklin for his service to the city for the last 12, 13 years. I learned a lot from him. I appreciate he was a mentor to me, and I do appreciate the service he did and he did to me personally. I'm looking forward to working with all the council members and the mayor here. Thank you once again.
And he takes his place. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the introduction of the new chamber executive.
Mayor, I'm looking in the room.
There she is.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor, I thought it would be best to introduce Ellie tonight, besides the fact that she's going to be coming on Thursday night and asking for money. So, Ellie Braxton Levine has just joined the chamber, started several weeks ago. She and I have already had an opportunity for lunch to talk about some of the things for the future of the chamber and the Coppell partnership. So, Ellie, I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to say, that or that.
This one here.
I just want to
Say thank you on behalf. It's such an honor to stand here in front of you on behalf of the Coppell Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and I am excited. You'll hear more from me on Thursday night, but we are so excited about the direction that we're taking with our chamber and building a stronger business community and a better collaboration between our city and our businesses and our schools. And so thank you so much, and I will be back on Thursday night with lots more. So thank you.
Thank you, Ellie.
And then item 8, presentation by Allies in Community. Mr. Land?
Mayor, thank you for the opportunity this evening. Noelle would normally have done the introduction of Taz and her team, but Noelle has strep throat. So I'm glad that he's not here tonight and infecting us all. So Taz, if you want to come forward. And this evening she's giving an update on the focus groups and the next steps. If you recall the work that they did back in the fall of 2017 doing the Kaleidoscope event, the survey. And so they have since had those interviews and have started developing the curriculum. So that's what Taz is here to talk about tonight.
We might sing. I'm not sure. So it's a pleasure to see all of you again. This is the follow-on report when we spoke with you about the survey that we did. And this is the follow-on focus groups that we discussed previously, to the survey that we did in October through November of 2017 that began at the Kaleidoscope Festival and finished at the Senior and Community Center and Cosby Library and CORE. The structure of the focus groups was that we did 12 focus groups and 6 interviews. There are still 2 more that we will conduct we're excited about. And it was a nice, diverse cross-section of the community that was both long and short-term, short-tenured residents, city employees, and community leaders. It included faith community and HOAs. One of the most wonderful findings, and a consistent finding across all of the focus groups, was that the residents consistently reported positive and optimistic views of the city of Coppell. It was just wonderful to see the passion and care that people have for this city. Specifically, residents appreciated the small town feel. They liked the fact that the city can't grow any bigger. That would always kind of emerge later. It's like, it's only us and we can close the door. That it's a very family-friendly space and that people enjoy coming home to the green. That was a consistent finding across every single focus group. They love the public events and the services, and they love the centrality of the location. Another thing that we did as we began each of the focus group or interviews was to ask these questions. Looking at these traits of allies, which most resonate with you? And these were the kinds of ones, these were the primary ones that resonated across the different groups, that were consistent findings. Actively build bridges across generations and cultures. Engage across differences and advocate for communities other than their own. Create safe space for authentic conversations. Keep confidence and build trust. To consistently advocate for the powerful, deep, and common good. Dedicate to lifelong learning. And this one was especially important. Demonstrate a willingness to share the knowledge of unwritten rules. And in this case, as we think about what are the unwritten rules, it has to do with why is volunteering important? Why is community engagement significant? So why and how do we engage and volunteer? Another very important finding was a desire for reciprocal learning, a desire to connect, and this was across both long-tenured and shorter-tenured residents and across all the many communities we spoke with. A desire to connect with neighborhoods different from their own and with other demographics and other faith communities as well. And we began to look at some of the essential barriers that appear to be in place. Certainly language, though that was not as significant as ideas around opportunities for engagement, information access, and the last one, structures and process. What are the structures that are in place, and how do people access those structures, and what are the processes for engagement? And we'll look at those a little bit more as we get to the end of the slide deck. When we spoke with long-tenured residents, and we wanted to pull out some quotes here because we felt like they encapsulated probably better than just some simple bullet points what we heard. I'll give you a moment to read through these. We heard a lot about pride and passion. We heard in every single long-tenured group and in the mixed groups about Kid Country. We heard about people serving on boards and being careful and very purposeful in the ways in which they cared for their community and the heart that they brought to make this city this wonderful place. And then we also heard a little bit about frustration. Why aren't the newer residents joining in and engaging in the same ways that we want them to, that we have done? So as we met with shorter tenured residents and we listened, these are some of the things that we heard. And we heard the common ground of we love our city. We're proud of our city. We heard we're passionate about our city and we're committed to our city and we love being here. And what we heard was also, yes, we have a deep ethic of service, but it shows up a little differently. And one of the most interesting ones was this last quote. I love Coppell. I didn't really think I understood until now how important volunteering has been to making my community great, the city that it is today. We also heard a little bit about frustration on that side as well. What do we need to do? Point us differently. Help us understand where to go. So we have some clear ideas about suggestions that we'll look at in just a moment. So communication and reciprocal learning, a clear finding and a clear insight from all the different focus groups we listened to. How do we go about that? Understanding processes underlying engagement. So there's a longer report that's coming, and it will speak to these ideas. And more importantly, it will look at this idea, what is what we're seeing as the Coppellian way? A welcoming attitude and a culture of belonging. People that care deeply about their city. How to engage and respond. And of course, we'll be addressing this with a cohort and that will begin, the Allies and Community cohort that will begin at the end of September. And there's much that can also be done within the city and within other stakeholders. So the very first thing is tell the story. What drew people to this city? It's a great legacy of why Coppell is what Coppell is today. That the very foundation of Coppell is based upon volunteerism and servant leadership and the heart of a servant leader. So that story is the story that we really heard in such passionate and beautiful ways as we interviewed people and listened to them. That's the very first thing, is tell the story. The second thing is working to create a culture of deeper belonging so that the bridges are built across the generations and cultures. Because what we found was that that desire for belonging is common ground. That love of the city is common ground. That desire to understand the other, I want to know the people in those other neighborhoods. I'm not really sure how, but I want to know them. I want to understand them. So we're thinking about ways to connect family and communities with their communities of origin and the larger Coppell community. How does that happen comfortably? Linking the historical foundations of the city of Coppell to the bright future of the city. Honoring all cultures of origin, which means the history, the rich history of this city, and the rich history of the people that are newer to the city, and finding ways for those conversations to happen and those relationships to build. Very specifically, and this is a 50,000 foot, but that's what we wanted to give you this morning or this evening in our 10 minutes together, to make it accessible. And it was wonderful. In each different conversation, there would be this light bulb moment where they'd say, you know, what you could do is have a single access point, a big umbrella that says allies, and that would gather a single website for all the volunteer and engagement opportunities and maybe a single concierge staff person. So that when people, it's kind of like dialing 911. So allies, I need to know if I want to engage in some way, there's a single touch point. Second, to make it more flexible, expand the range and types of volunteer opportunities. People suggested things like an integration, a buddy system, or a family matching system across different neighborhoods and communities. And for sure, multi-generational and family opportunities for volunteerism and engagement. And to make it very user-friendly with time and micro to macro level jobs and access. So both enhanced in-person opportunities and virtual interfaces as well. And we heard a good deal about transportation and accessibility for communities that may have time to engage, but may not have the opportunity to actually access the engagement. So elders, students that don't yet drive, et cetera, special needs, et cetera. The last question that we concluded each focus group with was this question of, what are the one or two words that come to your mind when you think about the future of Coppell, as we've had this conversation today? And these are some of the words that came. And so we've made a small word cloud here, which we're also expanding on. I think it's quite a wonderful group of words. I want to conclude with the mission statement of the Allies in Community, and my own personal statement of saying that it's been a very rich and rewarding process to listen to the residents and the employees of this rich and wonderful city. It's an honor. And to also thank the committee and the team that made this possible, our Diversity Wealth team here, and the wonderful steering committee from the city of Coppell. And to say thank you, and to say that we will work closely with the Future IQ team to collaborate and coordinate and share our findings and support their efforts as well in the Vision 2040 process. Any thoughts or questions, please?
Thank you very much. Thoughts, questions?
Got a comment. Just a comment.
Yanling?
I just want to thank you for all your work. I think what you're doing is a great collaborative effort and one that our city needs. So I thank you for all your efforts, and I think it's the beginning points of it's really going to build us and enrich us to be a better city. So I appreciate your work.
I love seeing how much people care about the city. It's a special place. Yeah.
Agree that it is a special place, and your efforts will enhance that. So thank you very, very much. And we look forward to all the additional things that will happen in the future.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Rick.
And then we have a presentation from Tracy Leach about the Vision 2040 strategic plan. You don't look like Tracy. I'm reading my script here.
Molly will introduce herself.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to give a project update on a very exciting initiative, Vision 2040, that's happening right now. We just kicked off our community engagement phase and got some really great feedback. And we couldn't have possibly had a better segue into this than Allies. So this is a pretty broad overview of the project. I did mention that we kicked off the community engagement phase recently with a think tank. I'll talk about that the most tonight, since I know that you guys were not in attendance there, other than the beginning in welcoming role intentionally. This is a data-driven and community-focused project, so staff and council is more or less taking the back seat, and their primary role and our primary role is really to facilitate broad participation from the community. We'll talk about the think tank in a high-level overview, but I'll get into some details there. The community-wide survey is out now and live. It's available on our project website, and that's going to run all the way through the end of the project in October. We're going to have 20 to 25 different community engagement workshops coming up in August, September, and October. The think tank is going to be invited to reconvene on November 5th, and then we'll have focus groups as well based on the outcomes in this project. And the final plan will be developed January of 2019. So one thing I want to point out here is that each step of this project builds off of data in a previous stage. So the think tank really laid the groundwork for what will be talked about in the 20 to 25 community engagement sessions coming up in the late summer and fall. And then those sessions will deepen that conversation, and the think tank reconvene and those focus groups will really put those concepts into real tangible ideas for projects that can be brought forth to the community and drawn out in the plan. So the think tank was very exciting. We hired a firm called Future IQ to facilitate, and they did a wonderful job. They led a very engaging conversation, and we got quite a bit of positive feedback, both verbally on the way out the door and in surveys. We had just over 100 participants. We invited key stakeholders in the community, such as North Lake College, CISD, and many others. We also invited community groups, members of the faith community, and we included previous attendees in the Allies focus groups and the folks that expressed interest at the Citizen Summit earlier in the year. It was 2 intensive evenings, so it was a very big time commitment, and these folks really did an act of service for the community by dedicating that time and putting the mental energy into this event. I think a lot of good outcomes came from it, and they should be proud of that time commitment that they made to our town and our future. The report from the think tank is coming from the consultant on July 24th. We should see the actual results and findings, summarized conclusions from them on the various activities, group work, presentations that were facilitated from that. I should mention at this part, too, that the think tank was open to the public, and we didn't turn anybody away who did want to participate. So this is a list of the organizations that were represented at the think tank. There were 43 different community stakeholders and community groups. And I think this speaks to the success of the representation that we got there in the same room. These were different affiliations that folks had official roles on through boards or came as representatives through an invite. And these were just the ones that told us what their affiliations were. I'm sure there were more. So on the first day of the think tank, Future IQ really walked the participants through a process where they did several different activities. A very high-level overview of this is the consultant, his name was David Burrell, he gave an introduction that introduced global trends that could eventually affect Coppell. And then he had the participants really brainstorm which key driving issues were most important to them. And he used that data, and the firm worked overnight and into the next day to create some summarized themes that came from that. And so the second day was actually based on the work that the participants did the first day. So the 2 key themes were community evolution and infrastructure solutions. And this is very interesting because several of the key drivers identified were mentioned in Tasneem's Allies presentation just now. Community evolution, to get a little bit more in detail, was defined by the drivers future-focused education, school district performance, community attractiveness, community engagement, and cultural and ethnic diversity. Infrastructure solutions, that second theme, was transportation, technological impact, housing access and affordability, and water management. So the second day, the conversation really deepened around these two themes, and Future IQ had the crowd break into groups and then discuss these and write what they envision future headlines being around some of these topics, and these will frame the conversation of the community engagement sessions moving forward. We received overall very positive feedback from the think tank about the consultant and the value of the time commitment. We did comb through and find a couple concerns that we're working to address on the website and we'll address at the engagement sessions that had mostly to do with a misunderstanding of the methodology, so we're going to clarify that in some of our verbiage and communication. So coming up next, we have community engagement workshops. And as I mentioned, these will really, the first half hour or so of each one, they're going to be about an hour and a half long, is going to provide context of the think tank and the work done there, and allow the participants to really provide their 2 cents on what was talked about there and deepen that conversation with more specific ideas. We're being very open-minded about the community engagement workshops to try to engage as broad of an audience as possible. We're going to host them outside of city facilities in places like schools, local businesses. North Lake College has offered to host one so that we can engage the younger population that we'll actually be serving in 2040, including high schools as well. Just minor, yeah, minor perspective to get involved. The next 30 minutes or so of that engagement session will be just discussion and implications about the broader future ideas, similar to the think tank participation. The first week, that August week, will be a little bit lighter in community engagement sessions because summer is not a great time for outreach in terms of reaching schools and catching people on vacation and those types of things. And we're really going to ramp up in September and October with those. So the community survey I mentioned is already available and online. I also mentioned that our goal is to collect 1,000 perspectives throughout the process. We already have 353 survey results as of a couple days ago, so we're already 35% there, and we haven't even begun any of our community engagement outreach for the workshops, which is great. We have the project portal is up on our website, and that is outlining the process, the methodology. Front and center on that webpage will be the upcoming opportunities to get involved. So it's going to be very easy to ask people to share that information, and the upcoming and expiring information will be front and center, prime real estate on the website. In an effort to be totally transparent with the process, we're also putting any findings, reports, presentations that were reviewed in workshops, sessions, the think tank, up there as well for the public to review. Any questions at this stage?
Councilmember Roden.
Thank you. I think you're off to a great start. I appreciate all the thinking and planning from past experience, and not to be negative at all, but regardless of how well we think we're communicating this, we will end up with citizens saying, no one ever told me, I wish I could have given some input. What else can we be doing to get the word out to the community that this is going on and that there are multiple opportunities to participate?
Well, we have a pretty in-depth communications plan and have thought about reaching folks that aren't really normally tuned in to city communications channels. So we're exploring avenues like using Nextdoor, which the city hasn't used before. And the think tank has actually created 102 advocates for the process that have been in quite a bit of communication with me. And so they've really recommended places that they think people would show up to. In all the communication that I have with participants and that we put out online, there's an active call for people to share the information with people that might not normally be tuned into our channels, with the disclaimer that we are trying to really get as broad of participation as possible. We've explored avenues such as when we do mailers that we think reaches everybody in town, looked at the neighborhoods we may be missing, and thought about how to reach them through print. And if they're not receiving water bills in apartment buildings and things like that. And we have an executive committee that will represent the community, and their first meeting is later this month. And their primary goal will be to do community outreach and really inspire their neighborhoods and their close communities as well. And we will be also archiving all of our communication efforts so that at the end of the line we can show how many attempts we did make. But we're open to ideas if you guys have any.
Anybody else have a question? Councilmember Mays.
Thank you, Mayor. Was there anything that just absolutely surprised you or blew you away that you'd never considered before, or that really deep insight to where we're going?
You mean from the conclusions and the scenario planning they did through the activities?
Yes.
There was a wide range of brainstorms, and I think many of those will be included in the report and available. But there wasn't anything that I'm hesitant to comment. I'm hesitant to comment on anything anybody said. But I think the report's going to be pretty detailed and include many of the perspectives.
Okay, I'll try to be patient and wait.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the update. As you know, we are all very interested in this because for the last 10 years or 8 years, we've been working on the 2030 plan as our basis. So we're looking forward to what the citizens have to say. So thank you very much for all the work that you are putting into this, and we appreciate you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is citizens' appearance. Citizens wishing to speak on any matter other than items that are a public hearing on the agenda must sign in. Presentations by each individual shall be limited to 2 minutes each. There shall the persons will be called up in the order that they have signed in. So our first person is Mr. Don Carroll. State your name and address for the record.
Sure.
Welcome.
I appreciate it. I am Don Carroll. I live at 924 Hidden Hollow Court. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Mr. Land, I appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback on the Cotton Belt line to the city on behalf of the residents of the Hollows at North Lake Woodlands. So the Hollows neighborhood is situated on the north side of Beltline between Mockingbird and MacArthur. The southern line of the residences is about 21 homes, and it is a mere 20 yards from the existing rail line today. And almost all of our neighborhood is within the 700-foot DART noise mitigation study area. Well, the residences of the Hollows are collectively concerned with the changing landscape of our neighborhood as the Cotton Belt is brought into service. Now, as you will recall, in 2015, Atmos Energy removed the tree line, which was a natural visual and noise barrier between our alleys and the rail line. Well, the removal of these trees has provided us 3 years now of actual experience of not having a barrier between us and the rail. So there are three things we are concerned with. Number one, safety. With no barrier between a very active alley behind these houses along the rail, there's an increased danger of children and pets wandering the short 60 feet to the rail. There's also been an increase in wildlife that comes through the hollows that are being dislodged from North Lake as construction is going on. Number two, the noise. There certainly has been a noticeable increase in vehicular traffic noise, as well as the occasional train that rolls through Coppell so far. And then number three, just aesthetics. Like the rest of Coppell, we enjoy having a beautiful neighborhood that adds value to the city. Well, without the barrier, you certainly can see the alley and the back of 21 homes from Beltline, and from the neighborhood, you now have a visual of the Beltline and the rail traffic. Well, with the introduction of the Cotton Belt, it can only be projected that the safety, aesthetics, and noise will become greater risk for us in the neighborhood. The frequent trains coming through will substantially change the environment we live with day to day. DART has even stated in their report that any new noise source in a community will cause an increase in noise, even if the new source level is lower than the existing level. And so I bring this feedback to you. I know I'm out of time now, so I appreciate that. I want to provide the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. The next person is Cal Yella.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council members, and fellow residents. First of all, congratulations to our new council member, Viju Matthew. So thanks to Dawn. And
please state your name and address.
My name is Cal Yella. I'm from 929 Crestview Drive. So whatever Dawn just mentioned, I just want to, add more on to the same thing, the concern we have, because our houses, I'm living in one of those houses that Dawn mentioned, that our houses are directly exposed to the train track and the Beltline Road directly. We used to have that natural barrier in form of trees before Atmos went ahead and cut them all. So we've been bringing this to city's attention since 2016. So we also recently collected signatures on petitions from our community. We got an amazing 80% majority of and we submitted all those petitions to the city council, not only from our the community that is directly impacted by that, but also by the neighboring communities who are indirectly affected. We collected signatures, so that shows the concern, how much concern we have about the noise and the security concern. And we also have recently several incidents related to security, or kids walking onto the train track because there is nothing to stop them in the middle, and then the wildlife coming in and killing our pets. So it's a serious concern we have, and it's only going to increase with this the Beltline Road project, the commuter train project. So we urge you to seriously consider having some kind of a barrier built between our houses and the train track, be it a wall or any kind of thing that can actually help us increase the security and reduce the noise levels, and of course improve the aesthetics of our community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person is Ann Puente. Welcome, and please state your name and address for the record.
Ann Puente, 696 Hollow Circle. I'm here to also urge for you to listen and hear our petition for some type of barrier. I live right across the street from where the train backs up. I'm really concerned because the last noise report was inclusive, and it was done prior to when the trees were cut down by Atmos. Also, I'm very concerned with the effects of the children that it backs up to the alley, and I'd really like for you to listen and to hear our concerns. All of our neighbors are very concerned with the aesthetics of the neighborhood. Looking at the 2040 plan, I think we want to make Coppell the best city it can without ugly train tracks or trains coming through our neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our citizens' appearance. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Today we have items A through G. The consent agenda items are routine in nature and are generally enacted in one motion. These items have been previously approved through either budget or past council action. Any item may be pulled and considered separately. Full descriptions have been available on the screen. Council, are there any items that you wish to pull and consider separately? Hearing none. Councilmember Roden.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve item 11, consent agenda A through G.
Second by Councilmember Mays. All in favor?
Long, Hinojosa, Flores, Mays, Roden, Yingling, Matthew Hill. None opposed. Motion carries.
One thing that I would like to comment on in item D, we had Councilmember Bijou Matthews was a member of the Coppell Recreation Development Corporation, and he submitted his resignation for that since there are already 2 members of the council on that. And then Mr. Franklin, who is no longer a member of the council, is being replaced, or his spot is being taken by Mayor Pro Tem Cliff Long. So a couple of changes, but all in good stead. Item 12, the public hearing. I'll open a public hearing, and Ms. Diamond is here to help us through it, so I'm going to ask her to read it into the record.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is our public hearing this evening. It's to consider approval of Coppell Middle School East, PD 292 SF12 to PD 292 revised SF12 to allow the construction of a 7,800 square foot classroom addition, a 13,800 square foot gym addition, and a 2,500 square foot cafeteria under the existing roof on 24.7 acres of property located at 400 Mockingbird Lane at the request of Coppell Independent School District, being requested by Louis Macias, Junior Director of Facilities, CISD. As you remember, in March of this year, Council approved some revisions to the site plan, which include the construction of a concession and restroom facility, bleachers and a press box, parking, and lighting. As of this date, the press box and the bleachers have been built. The lighting is in place. What they're asking for this evening is to do a 7,800 square foot classroom addition, a gym addition, and again, a cafeteria expansion. Here's a schematic showing the locations of these 3 additions. One important improvement to the building is that they are going to actually add an automatic fire sprinkler system, which is a wonderful upgrade. Now, just take a minute and talk about each of these additions a little bit more in detail. Again, what we're looking at is 8 new classrooms. These will be close, about 30 feet from Falcon Lane. There'll be 2 exterior doors, but they will be accessed mainly by the existing corridor. The second is a 13,800 square foot. It's going to be a competition gymnasium, and it's also going to double as a storm shelter. Within that gymnasium, they will have bleachers, concession stands, and restroom facilities, again, being similar to the other middle schools in our system. The third addition is a small expansion to the cafeteria. If you're familiar with the facility, there's like a porch right now, so they're just be enclosing that and then adding some more paving. All the additions are going to use bricks. They're similar to what's out there, so hopefully it'll look like a seamless expansion. Obviously, there'll be windows along the cafeteria addition and the classroom addition. As you might remember, when this did come through in March, there were some outstanding conditions of your approval. One was requesting a detailed landscape plan. There were some issues with buffering and this and that. So with this application, what they did do is add basically do a real survey of where the trees were, and they're offering to plant 10-gallon Nellie R. Stevens holly, about 5 foot on center, basically encircling the track. At the time that they were planted, they would be about 3 or 4 inches tall, but as fast as Nellie R. Stevens grows, about 3 feet per year to up to 20 feet, that this will provide, I think, a very good visual buffer. Let me show you. They'll plant that all along that fencing area. Another bit of an outstanding condition, they were going to redo the existing parking lot that's right next to the gymnasium. So they kind of redesigned that, and again, that will be in accordance with our fire lane requirements, our landscape requirements, so that'll be another excellent upgrade. On this request, we did send notices to 96 property owners within 200 feet. At this point, we received 5 responses in favor, 1 in opposition, 1 undecided. Then we sent an additional 363 notices to those within 800 feet, received no responses. That being said, on June 21st, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the PD 292R SF12 Middle School East, subject to the following conditions. A fairly standard condition that additional comments will be generated at the time of detailed engineering review of the grading, drainage, and utility and paving plan, and at the time of building permit. And the final one is that this property shall be platted prior to a certificate of occupancy for any of the expansion areas. This is requiring a lot of utility moving around, and we'd like to have those utility easements established. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and the applicant is in the audience.
Does the applicant have anything to add? Welcome, and please state your name and address for the record.
Louis Macias, 200 South Denton Tap, representing Coppell Independent School District. No, Marcy did a great job explaining. This has kind of been an ongoing project, from when we started with the field improvements to where we are now with the expansion of the middle school. So at this point, I'm just open to answer any questions that the board or the council might have for me.
Thank you. So there was no one that signed up to speak, so I'll turn it over to the council. Councilmember Roden.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Macia, what's the schedule?
Well, actually, the schedule is to start immediately. We have a little bit of work that we're trying to complete prior to the start of school. Basically, utility moves, adding the fire mains for the sprinkler system, and those are type things. So the schedule is actually underway now. We did get a special permit to do the electrical move, utility move that was underneath the building pad site. So our schedule is to start immediately as soon as we can acquire the permits. Completion, if everything goes well, by the start of school, a year from this coming August. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Mays.
Thank you, Mayor. Louis.
Yes, sir.
For those of us who had kids that went there, thank you very much for finally paying attention to East. Mm-hmm. I noticed that you had a change in the landscaping around the track area. Was originally it looked like there were some trees planted along the perimeter, and we've gone to some holly. What was the move for that?
Well, our thinking there is, I don't know if you've seen what Encore has done to the trees along the alley, because they're directly underneath the power lines. So our thoughts were, if we go and we plant these trees and we fill in the spots, as soon as they get up to where they're going to be functional for the screening, they're going to come in and they're going to V-shape those trees. So our thoughts were that if we could just create a barrier along the fence on the north and east side of the property, that would help kind of shield some of the noise and some of the visual from those properties on that end.
Okay, thank you. And then as far as the classrooms toward the front of the building, what's their use going to be for? Is it expansion or just additional students or?
It's additional students. We've seen some growth in our student population over the last few years, and currently the occupancy of that campus is right at about 800, and we're looking at probably having about 1,000 kids, students at that campus in the future.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Councilmember Hill. Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem Long.
Thank you, Mayor. Louis, I've just got a question. It has nothing to do with the construction itself, but as I recall, there was a memorial area there for Taylor Starch.
Yes, sir.
Prior to this, to getting started there. Do can you give us an update on what they did with that particular area?
Yeah, that area will not be affected by the expansion, so that will be able to remain in its current state in place at the campus.
Thank
so
you.
We put a lot of thought and planning into that. We didn't want to disrupt that. So, yeah.
Councilmember Hinojosa Flores.
Thank you. Hi, Louis. So I agree. Thank you for giving East some attention, even though I didn't go to East, but I've lived in that area before for a short period of time. And there's not a lot of space. It doesn't seem like. So help me understand kind of like, you're really close to Mockingbird too. Right. So I'm just trying to picture where the expansions are, and are we compromising or taking away from any just open space that you had that you used for anything else?
Unfortunately, that campus, if you're familiar with it, it was pretty tight to start with. The spaces that we are utilizing for the expansions, for the gym expansion in particular, were green spaces between the two campuses that weren't specifically there for any particular reason other than just green space between the two campuses. So we don't feel that we're taking anything away. The green spaces behind Mockingbird will remain. And then with the additions that we're doing to the field out there, we feel like that's going to be a benefit to the campus as well, to be able to utilize that space on rainy days, times when normally you wouldn't be able to go out there because it was muddy, and now having the turf and the track and all the paving that we'll be installing, we think it's going to help.
Any other questions? Councilmember Hill.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing and approve item 12 with conditions.
Second by Councilmember Yingling. All in favor?
Hill, Long, Hinojosa Flores, Mays, Roden, Yingling, Matthew Hill. None opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you very much for all your help through this process.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Item 13. Thank you, Ms. Diamond. Item 13, consider approval of the award of professional services agreement to Brown Reynolds Watford Architects, Inc. in a not to exceed in an amount of $1,359,755 to provide architectural and engineering services related to the design, construction documents, and construction administration for the addition of Fire Station 4, relocation of Fire Station 1, resource storage facility, and authorizing the city manager to execute all documents. And we have Fire Chief Richardson here.
Good evening.
Welcome.
So over the years, the growth and development within the city has led to a fire rescue and EMS model that no longer meets safe and effective response and service levels. Specifically, the fire department is unable to meet the National Fire Protection Association's NFPA 1710 standard that describes the organization and deployment for fire suppression, emergency medical operations, and our special operations as well. So for the past 18 months, we've talked a lot about this topic, and several actions have been taken to address the fire service level needs. That culminated in a standards of cover and stations evaluation study that we spent a lot of time on. That was conducted by the Emergency Services International, which is a consultant that we had used. During this time, we had well over 10 meetings with all of our elected officials. They included city council discussions, workshop presentations, public hearings, executive sessions that all related to this topic. Then in August of 2017, city staff was instructed by the city council to move forward with implementing the addition of Fire Station Number 4 and the relocation of Fire Station Number 1 that included our resource storage facility. We went back and developed a multi-year plan that had specific milestones that included land acquisitions for both facilities this year, as well as initiating the architectural design process. So as we were moving forward with the design process, we had requests for qualifications were developed by our purchasing department that were publicly posted, followed up with pre-proposal meetings of all the interested firms. There were 13 firms who were evaluated by the committee. That was comprised of the fire department, our director of parks and recreation, our director of public works, and our development services coordinator. After that preliminary review and scoring, there were 3 firms that were invited for the finalist interview by the committee. And based on the selection criteria and the process, the staff now recommends Brown, Reynolds, and Watford, we refer to them as BRW, Architects Incorporated, as described in the provided contract for the design and construction services. BRW is a very highly respected firm and has several successful projects in the region, in the state, and throughout the United States. Several are in construction in our area. And having worked with BRW on other city projects, such as Life Safety Park, our staff members have very clear and referenceable knowledge and experience with the firm. I have representatives here from the fire department staff who have been involved with this project for the last 18 months, as well as Gary DeVry, who is representing BRW, and we're available to answer any questions that you may have.
So we've been talking about this for about 18 months, like he had mentioned. So are there any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion. Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve item number 13.
Second by Councilmember Roden. All in favor?
Long, Hinojosa, Flores, Mays, Roden, Yingling, Matthew Hill. None opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
So may I add, in the fire department traditions, when we have a recruit, or what we would refer to as a rookie, when they do something for the first time, that's ice cream for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, chocolate is my favorite.
That means he buys, right?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much.
Okay, item 14, discussion regarding Dart Cotton Bell line. Now we have Tracy Leach here. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Okay. Well, thank you all. It feels like we have been leading up to this discussion for many months now, and so we are finally at a point where we've got a few key issues that we're going to talk about tonight. Potential sound mitigation improvements and the master interlocal agreement that we've been working on with DART. And then I would like to get some direction from the council in regard to the critical trail segment, the funding for that, and we'll talk a little bit about what is driving the schedule for that particular issue. I was remiss. I would like to introduce that we've got a DART representative with us today. So John Roan is here with us. He's Vice President for Capital Design and Construction, and he has been helping us walk through this process so that we can have information for this presentation tonight. Okay, so some of the key points as it relates to some of the environmental impacts that we're going to be talking about tonight, specifically about noise. The DEIS identified 7 locations in Coppell for quiet zones, and all of the noise impacts were mitigated to levels below the moderate impact level. So all of the noise levels were less than the 3 decibel level increase that would be required for DART mitigation at any one of those locations. There were no locations in Coppell that met the threshold for required mitigation on vibration. No locations that met the threshold for sound walls or for visual mitigation that would be required as part of the project. So all of the improvements that we will be walking through tonight from a discussion perspective, those are all improvements that the City of Coppell would be funding and that we would be coordinating with DART to roll into the construction of the line itself, so that those improvements are coordinated, so we don't have our own separate contractor coming in trying to put a sound wall once everything's already done. So we would be coordinating with DART in order to get those improvements done depending on how we would like to proceed forward. Okay, so we'll start with sound walls. If you look in the DEIS, the study area for noise mitigation was actually 375 to 750. So we've gone slightly more conservative, so we've just added another 25 feet to that, so 350 to 750 from the tracks. The price estimates that you see for the two different wall heights, those are prices that were submitted by the design build contractors that submitted proposals to DART over the summer. And so, again, those are not firm prices, but they are fairly representative of what we will be seeing as we move forward. So if we look at the total linear feet that are residential in nature, that have no vegetative buffer between the houses and the rail line, we're looking at about, give or take, so depending on if we want to go a little further or if we want to cut the wall off a little shorter, I just did some mapping on GIS. We have approximately 7,700 linear feet. And so doing the calculations on how many square feet that would be for each one of the different wall heights, depending on how we would like to look at those, we've got a fairly sizable quantity in terms of the square footage that we would be looking at. Now, that is assuming we put sound walls the entire stretch of the way, right? So that's kind of the framework in terms of the cost perspective for the sound wall discussion. I've got the next couple slides are walking through the locations that I used to come up with that linear foot calculation. So if you'll notice here, so this is segment A, this is over by River Chase, so we've got Fairway on the right side of that map, and we will have MacArthur on the left side of that map. It kind of got cut off. So it's about 2,500 linear feet. For this area, there was a sound monitor that was right about over here, okay? That was a 0.1 decibel increase from the existing to the projected project noise levels. And so that is part of the reason why there is no sound wall mitigation here. Now, what is proposed for this location is the quiet zone at MacArthur Boulevard. So that will eliminate all of that horn noise that will be coming from the train through that location. And at Fairway, I'm sorry, yes, Fairway and MacArthur on bookends, both ends here. You see the prices there on the sound walls. If we were to take that entire stretch, eliminating the roadway itself, we're anywhere from 1.6 to $3 million for this stretch here. You have any questions about this stretch? Okay, so this is segment.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you're talking about a sound wall, you're actually talking about the things that we see today, like
the precast panels with the, yes.
Thank you.
And those prices are just assuming that we are installing the standard design, so that wouldn't be any upgrades if we wanted stone, if we wanted it to look different, if we wanted specific stamping or any of that stuff. This would just be what the DART standard will be for the rest of the line. That's what that pricing represents. Okay, so this is part of the neighborhood that we heard some of the residents, and I have had a number of discussions with representatives of the HOA for this neighborhood. So this is all east of Mockingbird, and there is going to be a small section we're going to talk about as segment C that's west of Mockingbird. But this actually is the segment that has the highest increase for any of the locations within Coppell. It is a 1.3 decibel increase based on the noise monitoring that was conducted. There was for the 2017 monitoring that was done. The monitor at this specific location, which was somewhere like 841 or 837, somewhere in this neighborhood,
it malfunctioned. So we did not get readings for this location. DART has since gone out and done supplemental readings from this location. They have not gotten those results back, or I have not seen those results. So at this point, the 1.3 decibel increase is what we've got to go on, because that was from the 2010, which would have been in advance of when Atmos came and took all those trees out. So I don't know what that reading will be, but at this point, we'll go with the information that we've got. And so we've got the pricing here for this stretch of almost 1,900 linear feet through here. And then we've got this really small stretch right through segment C, which is just the other side of Mockingbird before you get to the big part of the vegetation there. And it's just under 300 feet. Again, the 1.3 decibel increase. And this is about 200,000 to about 345,000. Okay, segment D. This is over there by Creekview neighborhood. So this is an interesting location because it does not have any sort of robust vegetative buffer, but it is located on the freight line. But at this part of the line, the passenger service has dipped down south and is quite a distance away from these residences. So as you can see from the noise testing that was done, it's a 0.1 decibel increase. But again, they are very close to that freight line. And you see the pricing there for just over 3,000 linear feet. Oh, wow, that didn't show up at all. That's terrible. Okay. So this is just a summary of all of those costs. The piece that you can't see at all in the neon, I apologize for that, is for the 15-foot wall, and it represents the range, so the low range and the high range on those two columns. So I apologize for that. You guys have, so, well, I know that's a lot of information and a lot of big numbers to digest. I'll be happy to answer any questions on sound walls. At this point, I'm not asking for firm declarations of this is what we would like to see from a time sensitivity perspective. We do have a little bit of time to walk through any questions or do some follow-up or anything else that you guys would like to see. So we don't have to make a decision tonight. So at this point for the sound walls, I'll open it up to questions that you all might have.
One question is, without the concrete side sound walls, was not it already the plan that DART would have a vegetation buffer with a fencing?
Yes, so there will be safety fencing. So I know safety was brought up by a number of the residents. There will be safety fencing along the length of the rail. And there is vegetation that is planned. It is anywhere from 150 to 200 feet apart. So it is not a solid buffer through. It is ornamental aesthetics.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mays.
So the first question that comes to mind is, what type of acoustic attenuation do you get from a 12-foot versus 15-foot wall?
Well, in terms of the mitigation, right? So I don't have a number for you in terms of the percent that you increase or that you decrease the amount of sound that's coming over that wall. I know the 15-foot wall is the height that has been requested for parts of the North Dallas area. I would have to do some follow-up, and I apologize. I'm not an acoustician in terms of
that's okay.
having some of that, but I can follow up.
That's the kind of questions we'll be needing to see. In addition, one of the questions that's going to come up is how do they measure the 0.1 or 1.3 dB acoustic? Is that an time average over the period of time?
Yes, so they came out and they did 24-hour readings. And John, I'm going to go ahead and give a stab, and if I misspeak, please hop in. So for those locations, they are the 24-hour averages for the outdoor noise level for each one of those locations. So it's the sound equivalent level for the 24-hour period that they were out there.
So how did they determine what a DART train would add?
So they modeled the sound based on the model of train that DCTA is using, because that's going to be the model that will be utilized on this track. They modified that the noise from those engines based on how they were going to operationally be running the line here. So it's a slightly different operational model, where I think we've got 2 engines instead of 1 engine for our line here. So they've got some real life experience, and they know what sort of equipment they're going to be using, and that is how they modeled the noise projection for the build scenario for the line itself.
And
is that, John, is that correct?
20 minutes.
Okay.
And based on from a high level, these zones are relatively all the same. Why are we seeing such a big difference between the 0.1 and 1.3 dB?
I don't remember that.
I'll let John answer that one.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Some of what impacts the noise levels that you receive from the measuring devices are based on the elevations in which the equipment is placed. So the elevation of the track and the corridor changes throughout the different areas. So some areas you may have the top of rail that would be higher, almost at a height that would be midpoint level of a house. Some cases it may be at a roof level height. And so those are different things based on vegetation, based on elevation, and different variables throughout the area that will impact that as well. Then there's the normal noise level that you have from what could be created by just natural noise and your traffic noise from vehicular traffic and things of that nature. So.
Did you get your question answered?
We have to cover that later when we get into some more of the details.
Okay.
So one basic question is, will the track that we're along this area that we're looking at, I know that we're going to go elevated above ground at some point. Will that ever actually be adjacent to the sound wall that was being shown here, or is that going to diverge off to the south?
Yes.
Yes, which one?
It'll diverge in the area, I believe, that there on the map there, it'll be south and diverge at that point, where we will have freight traffic, on one side and passenger traffic on the other.
It will only be elevated over Beltline.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that as they started doing the gradual elevation, because they're not going to, 1 or 2% grade.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They won't be going over any wall that you could put in.
No, because that would be on the other side. It would be on the west side of the station. Beltline.
So, and part of that reason for the divergence is part of the reason the diagram shown here, or the picture shown here, is only the 0.1 dB, is because the track is basically quite a ways away. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Roden.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you go back to the matrix, the chart you had? So, the engineer in me immediately multiplied out your 15-foot wall times the square footage and came up with about 9.3 million, and recalled back that we're putting away 250,000 a year, and so that was of concern. But this helps a lot. Obviously, I think what we've got to talk about is what's the threshold. Is 0.1 dB worth this cost? I think personally the homes along Crestview, we've got to do something, but that's an issue that is more manageable. But if I'm understanding, as you get further west in the tracks, as Councilmember Mays was saying, as the tracks go south, the only traffic that will be on the track adjacent to those businesses or whatever is the current freight traffic that's been there for years, correct?
That's correct.
And so, again, I don't see a need to add sound walls to a situation that's been the same forever. So I think that's where we've got to really look at these numbers, is in those critical areas, what is the difference? I agree with Councilmember Mays. It would help to have some acoustical data, the difference between a 12 and 15-foot sound wall. I know that can be modeled. It's just a matter of how much more does that 3 feet buy us.
I'll be more than happy to work with Tracy Leach and provide that information to her.
Good. Thank you.
Councilmember Yingling.
Kind of to piggyback on what Councilmember Roden said, we're talking about the increases at decibels, but where are we at? Where's our starting point? What is the, without any kind of increases or changes, what is the decibel level as it is now?
I don't recall from the report.
It's going to vary by location.
So let's take the locations that we talked about and the increases.
Okay, so existing sound noise levels for the stretch along, hang on a second, this isn't the chart I want. There's a chart. Give me a second here. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so the existing, okay, so this is from the DEIS. It's on 3-54 if anybody wants to go back and reference that. So essentially, so at 853 Crestview, so the existing ambient noise in 10 was 65 decibels.
Okay.
Okay, so Carter, we had a reading at 525 Carter, that was 61. 145 Glendale was 56. 800 Bullock was 60. 1717 East Beltline, so I'm sorry, heading back the other way, east was 66. And then we actually added, so in 2017 we added 2 additional sound locations. So at 400 Southwestern, so that's without train noise, 62, and then at River Chase, 1315 River Chase at the apartments was 61.
Okay, so we're looking at a 0.1 decibel increase and then a 1.3 decibel.
Correct.
Based on an average somewhere in the low 60s, somewhere in
Yes.
there.
Yeah,
on average.
Crestview is the highest location.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
So that is current traffic on Beltline. And the train that comes through a couple, 3-4 times a week today. Councilmember Hill?
So I have a couple questions. These walls will be constructed on the easement of the railroad?
Yes, it would be within the right-of-way. There would not be any additional acquisition in order to do these.
Okay. And I think that really if we're going to make a decision on a 12 or 15-foot wall, we need to hire an acoustical consultant to do that analysis and only go to 15 where it's absolutely necessary. You know, I look at these numbers and how much it's going to cost. You know, I do new construction and we build by highways and railroads all the time. Your typical exterior wall will get you the sound attenuation what you need. It's your windows that's your weak point. You could go in and replace every window in a house for $30,000 a house. And you look at that stretch on Section D, 30,000 times the 21 houses that are along there. That's a far cry from $2.6 million. So I know we can't go in and improve people's property, but there's got to be a way that we can do this smartly and save the city a ton of money. I just don't know how we can make that happen. I mean, we obviously can't spend public money on private property, but I just don't know if sound walls are the answer. So,
Well, Councilmember Long.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions, Tracy. First of all, did the city have any involvement or any input into how the sound was going to be measured?
No. Now, DART has used FTA standards for the study that they did.
Mm-hmm.
So these were not standards that they just came up with arbitrarily. These were based on FTA standards.
Okay. Would it be safe to say that if the greater the sound, the more potential liability that DART has in the construction process? I mean, we're trying to get to a point whether we're going to pay for the wall. I mean, part of the thing is, were we going to pay for the walls, or is DART going to pay for the walls, or a portion? Is that an option?
Not in the current format that we're seeing in the DEIS. For walls, yeah. So at this point, any discussion
But doesn't
of
make
sound
any
walls
difference
would
what
be
the
us.
sound is? I mean, what the sound is, we're responsible for the walls.
Yes, based on the policy that DART has in terms of their required mitigation, we do not have any locations that would have met the threshold that would have required sound wall.
Is that based on what they've measured so far?
Yes, sir.
But if it were something greater than that, then that might change, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
One of the things that I would like us to look at in this is, and obviously when we're talking about noise attenuation and all that kind of stuff, experts need to make these determinations. But if you have a standard chain link fence that DART would build, and you put intense vegetation, which I think would be a whole lot cheaper than these walls. Does that, I know it's visually will break up seeing the trains eventually, but does that provide a sound barrier as well? I don't, they were, when the people moved into Crestview, the most of the vegetation was cut. Take that back. When those houses were built, most of the vegetation was cut. Over the last 15 years, the vegetation got high, and then it was cut by Atmos. So right now it seems stark, but that's what they were happy with before. Of course, there's a more intense use. But again, we're talking dollars and cents. So finding out if there is a noticeable difference with vegetation, I think I'd almost rather look at a vegetation than look at a concrete wall. And both of them are the safety barriers that we were talking about. So just another thought.
Okay.
Councilmember Yingling.
So just for clarification, DART is required to put some type of the security wall there, and then adding the vegetation, the fencing there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That I just wanted.
Yeah, the safety fencing is going to be part of the project.
Okay. That was just clarification.
Okay.
Hill?
Based upon discussions that I have with my acoustical consultant, vegetation is a very poor sound barrier. It has to be so super dense to be effective that you can't put in enough trees, and because it's really the trunks and the big branches. Yeah. Now there are some certain types of trees that have real waxy leaves, and they do refract some, but it's just not that effective. I don't know that we'd ever be able to get enough planting there to equal a wall. Now, it may mitigate it some, but if we're only talking about 0.1, you know, it's a tough decision to make.
Councilmember Mays.
So if we pay for the wall and it's put on the right-of-way, who's responsible for maintaining the wall over time?
I would assume we would be through there, and we would end up coordinating with DART in terms of access to maintain.
So that would.
I will coordinate. That'd be something we'd have to coordinate.
Yes, we have options in which we could coordinate that. We also, through the interlocal agreement, could agree on different options and opportunities in which the cost could possibly be shared, or there are other avenues in which the maintenance of the wall could be addressed.
Hey, well, there's a lot of great information. Finally getting to something that feels real.
Right. Well, we're not done yet. So that's just the sound wall piece.
Are there any other questions about the sound walls? Okay.
Okay. So one of the other options, so in terms of mitigation, and most of these, as you can see from the locations, they are not going to help the residential. But there are 3 locations. So there are 7 locations in Coppell in which DART will be installing the quiet zones. Denton Tap was originally included on that list for quiet zones, and then as the design was more solidified in terms of that alignment heading out south into Dallas for Cypress Waters, it didn't make sense from their perspective to keep that as a quiet zone, because there was not going to be any additional train traffic going through that intersection than there currently is today. Okay, so if we wanted to essentially make all of Coppell a quiet zone, we would need quiet zones at these 3 additional locations. Again, this pricing is based on what the design build proposers had provided. I would like to say for Freeport Parkway, that is a location where we currently are obviously making a huge investment right now. We have checked with the contractor to confirm that the design that we've got, whether that meets the standard for quiet zone design or not, and then see how far away we are from that, so that if there are things that we can do now that will not really incrementally cost us near what the 650 is here, because we're already improving that project, that can be a location that can be plug and play ready for quiet zone through that location. So really, in my mind, we're really talking about Denton Tap and Royal. And so if there is an interest in making Coppell the entire stretch quiet zone area, we can certainly add these to something to the list in terms of improvements to consider.
Councilmember Roden.
So, Ms. Leach, just to make sure I understand, Denton Tap, what we're talking about there, because the DART railway is elevated, there would be no horns or anything there. What we're talking about are the occasional freight train, making that a quiet zone.
Yes.
So that, to me, it's never been a quiet zone. It's never been an issue. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, there are, I mean, the only thing that will really be different now is that there will be quiet zones on either side of Denton Tap. So Moore and Southwestern on either side, and Coppell Road, all of those will be quiet zones. At which point, then, if you've got the freight horn coming through there, again, it's not more noise than what is there, but it will be it'll be the bear that's different through that stretch.
I can see a nod in the audience. You can hear it I can hear it when it goes past Fairway, when it goes past Mockingbird, when it goes past MacArthur, when it goes past Mockingbird, and when it goes past Moore.
So what I hear you saying, this is a chance to right a previous challenge, but really is unrelated to DART, just for clarity.
Denton Tap, yes.
Yes, Councilmember Mays.
So as far as Freeport and Royal, right now,
Industrial.
And so why now do we need to consider the change there?
I throw it up there just in if council is interested in making all of Coppell a quiet zone, we can make that happen. Clearly, this is not going to have a significant impact on the residential population in Coppell.
Freeport is close.
I throw that out there just as for y'all's consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, but Freeport is really close to Old Town.
Yes.
Which is close to residents. It's going to be 20 times a day.
Yes, Freeport, yes. It will be back on, the passenger will be through there at that point. So again, this is, we don't need a decision tonight. This is really our first opportunity to just have this discussion. And so this is the universe of what is possible. And so we can start pairing and trimming and shaping from here. But this is the total universe of what we can do.
Just let me add, so we've talked about this before, and I'm not being critical of the presentation because it's great information. The challenge that we have as council is kind of the incremental nature of this, and I think when we did the capital infrastructure planning, we kind of got all this information together and said, okay, here's what we think we need to do, here's in total what it's going to cost, here's the potential funding sources. To me, we need to have that kind of fifth Tuesday session or something to really go through this in detail so that we can get a sense for total cost and where the money might come from if we decide to do it. So again, good information, but we just need it all rolled up and a chance to talk about it, I think.
Any other questions or comments?
And there's more.
And there's more.
Okay. So this is the piece of the discussion that's related to the trail. So there is a 12-foot wide trail that is proposed for the entire length of the Cotton Belt line. It is not included in the cost of the actual rail project. So this is the construction of the trail itself would be borne by the communities in which it's going to run through. COG is helping coordinate and herd all of the cats because there are a number of different entities that we are working with. Throughout the 26-mile stretch for the trail, there are a number of segments that are considered critical. And the definition of critical from the COG perspective is if that section could not otherwise be constructed unless it goes in with the rail itself, that's the definition of a critical segment. Cost is not a defining characteristic. It's literally can it not be built unless we do it right now with the rail itself. So we have one section through Coppell that is considered a critical section, and that is the elevated crossing over Beltline. And what is being proposed is having an elevated, we would just have a bridge that would be the pedestrian bridge that would have the trail that would be built along with the elevated crossing. The total cost for that segment, there's about 4 miles through Coppell total. That segment is going to run us about 1 mile. I think it's just over 1 mile. Right now, the estimated cost for that stretch is $4.3 million. COG has identified some federal funding that would do an 80-20 share. And then Dallas County has pledged a match of 50% of the local share. So the 20% that's left over of that $4.3 million, so the local share would be $865,000, and then half of that, because Dallas County would match our half, would be the $432,614. So essentially 10% of the cost. COG has asked all of the communities that have a critical segment to provide some sort of commitment on whether they are willing to fund their share of the construction costs for the critical segments because they are intending to go in front of the RTC and their technical board, the COGS technical board, and then RTC with this plan for the funding for the critical segments throughout the line. So they need an answer from the communities by the end of July is what they've told us. So this is the only real piece tonight that is a time-sensitive issue per se. There are other. Carrollton's got a critical piece. Addison's got 2 segments that are critical pieces. Dallas has 4 critical segments, and then there's 2 in Richardson.
So the question is, can that fund come from CRDC?
Yes.
Yes. It's a trail. Okay. So is this something that we need to take formal action on?
The consensus that you all have just provided here is good enough.
So on a consensus basis, is everybody okay as long as CRDC can spend that money?
So I got one question. Is this part of our master trail plan? I'm sorry. Is this part of our master trail plan?
No. So the answer to that is I think so, because they just went through and they amended that master plan.
It's part of the Cotton Belt Line Trail.
Yes.
So yes, it's part of the plan. What happened though is because we wanted to move the line to the south, it required this bridge that then requires the trail to have to go over Beltline as part of this project.
Yes.
So was this bridge part of the plan? No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood then.
But the trail is, right?
Yes.
That's all I was asking.
Okay. Now, in terms of funding for the remainder, so there are other segments. So we've got another 3.3 miles of trail, and those would be worked into a future work plan in terms of how we would like to prioritize that. So those pieces are not the time-sensitive components. My understanding is the other cities are doing exactly what we are doing is let's talk about the critical segments, and then we are going to work those other pieces in as they can into their parks master plan and start prioritizing with their communities about how they want to start chewing up all of those pieces of the Cotton Belt.
Any other questions, comments? Mayor Pro Tem Long.
Thank you, Mayor. As I look at this map up here, Tracy, I see all that blue line that runs through Dallas, and then there we are with the red, a short distance. It looks like to me, and this is just a comment, and obviously it's premature, but it looks like to me that we might be able to make a commitment that, yeah, we want to get the trail taken care of, but it looks like to me that since that blue line, as I see it there in Dallas, is nothing more than a 12-foot concrete jogging thing, and then all of a sudden we get to build a big bridge across Denton Tap. Seems to me that we need to talk about the cost, leveling that in some fashion, because we're obviously an integral segment of that total trail, but the cost that's going to cost us for that is nothing compared to what Cypress Waters is going to pay for their portion of the trail.
And I want to say there are there is a segment. There's a substantial segment of the pieces that you're referencing there. Some of that is going to be funded by Dallas and Cypress Waters. Now, clearly not all of that stretch there that you see that's kind of labeled the CBT 5. So not all of that would be funded by others, but Dallas County and Cypress Waters they will have trail connectors into all of this. In terms of cost sharing, that's something we can we can look at.
Well, I think, I think that we do. I mean, it's unfortunate that we're the ones that have to pay, that are on the high portion of the trail. So in concept, yes, we don't want to in any way slow down, I don't think, the building of the trail, but I think we have to take a closer look at that.
Just related to that, CBT 5 is, if I understand right, CBT 4 is critical because it's elevated. So the
Correct.
design has to include the trail.
Yes.
But CBT 5 is also elevated, or at least a big portion of it. You've got to start elevating prior to, as you go east to west.
Yeah,
quite a ways back, actually, right? Because of the grade. So a portion of that has to be elevated as well. You can't wait till you get to Denton Tap to start elevating.
Yeah, no, and it's not.
And why that wouldn't be critical as well.
Well, and all right, so let me preface this map by saying it is not scale. Right, so this is to denote just general location of where this critical segment is.
The piece that's specifically in
Yes.
Coppell.
Yes.
So Dallas has its own critical thing.
So if that's true and and the critical element actually extends further east where it's elevated, that answers Mayor Pro Tem Long's question that Dallas or somebody other than
Will have to.
Coppell would be paying for that cost,
Yes.
I would assume.
So 800 feet east of Sanders Loop to Mockingbird is funded by others. So that is not us, City of Coppell. So that's the one segment that I said, part of that is going to be paid by others.
Okay, anything else?
Okay, last piece, I promise.
Please.
Yes, ma'am. So we've been working with DART on the interlocal agreement, and the way we're going to structure that is we'll have a master ILA, which was included, the draft was included in your packet. The way that's structured right now is that the ILA, the master ILA, will cover the real estate component of the transaction and our participation in this project. Essentially, that ILA, as it's in your packets tonight, outlines that the totality of Coppell's financial commitment is represented in the real estate conveyance itself that we are intending to provide for the right-of-way for the rail as it comes south, as well as the rail station itself. What we would do subsequent to this master ILA, so let's say, for example, we would like to put some additional sound attenuation improvements along any part of the rail line. We would add amendments to the master ILA at a later date that would come before this council that would outline very similar. Here's what our responsibilities are going to be for these improvements. Here's what DART's responsibilities will be for those improvements. Each one of those will come back as an amendment to the master so that we would have one single agreement instead of 4 or 5 different smaller agreements out there. So the draft that's in your packet has been reviewed by the city attorney. I have some edits, small, they were non-substantive edits from DART. So at this point, if you all have any comments or questions about any of the language that you see in there, what I would like to do is take any of that feedback, amend the ILA, and bring it back to you for approval on the 24th.
One question. At one point in time, our relationship was going to be with COG, not with DART directly.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that has changed?
It has. So back in May, I met with Gary Thomas and Michael Morris at COG, and we talked about the mechanics of how everything needed to be set up. And at that meeting, COG says, hey, our role was just to get us kind of to the finish line, and now that we are here, we're going to hand you off, and that relationship now that ILA will be between you and DART. And so that is how we have proceeded forward.
Councilmember Roden.
I'm sorry to have so many questions. I
Not a
appreciate
problem.
the info. Just the mechanism. So we decided to do sound walls or do improvements above and beyond.
Mhm.
The mechanism for paying for those, say those are part of the construction schedule in 2022.
Mhm.
We pay when it happens. Do we fund up front? Just as we're looking at the capital cost, how do we know?
Well, and that is something that we haven't really discussed with DART in terms of, okay, once we identify what we would like to see, when do they need the cash in hand? So that we have not ironed out just yet.
I mean, obviously pretty critical from a budgeting and,
Yes.
and just lining up the
Yeah.
capital. So, okay, thank you.
Lots to think about. Mayor Pro Tem Long.
Once again, thanks, Mayor. The question I've got is we're going to convey this land to DART. This is not the entire parcel that we have over there, the city?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's
Are we going to
correct.
end up with a bunch of slivers over there that we can't sell if we tried to sell them? After we've conveyed
There will
it?
be some pieces. Now, some of our land has the Encore towers on it, so in terms of
Not
having,
very usable?
Correct. In terms of utility, there are some limitations that are there today, but DART is not going to require all 49 and a half acres that we've got out there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we will have further conversations about this.
Yes.
Everybody, if you have any additional thoughts about the ILA, please get those to Ms. Leach ASAP.
Okay.
Anything else?
Anything else from you all?
Questions or comments? I think we did questions and comments all the way through.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much. Very informative. Item 15, City Manager Report.
Mayor, just an update on several projects and then a question. The dirt removal is supposed to start next week out at Old Town. Yeah. So anyway, so that's coming up. The Hunterwood Park, you saw an article in the newspaper. The construction should start in September with a 6-month project. That's that erosion control project that y'all authorized us to move forward with within our park. Freeport, utility work continues. The eastern half of the bridge has been demolished. Pavement removal continues on the east side. So they're continuing to make progress, and I continue to recommend people avoid Freeport if at all possible as far as driving over there. It is a challenging drive in that area. The one question I have for you is we've been talking about like this is a potential Fifth Tuesday, this subject matter of DART. We have the meeting on the 30th, which is a Monday night, which is part of the budget process because we will have the certified values. And then Tuesday night is the Fifth Tuesday. I haven't received enough feedback to let me know which night you would like to either combine and have everything on Monday night, which could potentially turn into a longer evening, or have the budget on Monday night and then have a Fifth Tuesday. So I need some direction on setting that up because of the agenda items that we're talking about.
So what you just said is the budget piece could end up being a longer piece.
It could, and more. We'll know more about that next Thursday night as we talk about the general fund. So you can let me know next Thursday night because I have to post, and getting ready for the 30th. There's that week in between, so we have time.
Mm-hmm.
I just need y'all to let me know. So let's say next Thursday night when we're talking about the general fund, after that's over with, I just need to have some direction about what do we want to do. Everything on Monday night, or do we have Monday night and Tuesday night?
So, but Monday night, as far as the budget is concerned, is a critical date.
That's the night you're going to actually give us the instruction on the tax rate.
But in the timing, that's a critical date that it has to be that Monday.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I think it's a mistake to try to have that critical final budget meeting and then say, now we're through with that 2 or 3 hours and we're going to dig into this DART stuff. I just don't think we're going to give both the time necessary. I hate to meet both nights, but I just think that's a mistake.
Two people that are okay with both the 30th and the 31st. I mean, Mayor Pro Tem Long. You want to wait till next Thursday to make the decision, or just Monday and Tuesday are fine? One might be shorter than the other.
That's exactly right.
We can hope. Okay. Anything else?
No, ma'am.
Nope. Okay. Mayor and council reports. Fabulous feedback on the Celebrate Coppell. Everybody, it wasn't a swamp this year, and it was a little warm, but it was a great event. People stayed a long time, and it was well appreciated. And the parade, I didn't get to the parade. It was hot. It was very hot. Good.
We had enough stuff to give out.
Good. It is a tradition, and I'm sorry I missed it. Upcoming events, as we've just discussed, it is budget season. So what that means is your city council is doing a lot of budget talks. We have the crime control prevention district and a budget workshop on this Thursday on the 12th at 6 o'clock. These typically happen in the second floor conference room here at Town Center. And then we have additional budget workshops on the 19th and the 30th, also at 6 o'clock in the second floor conference room. And now we will have a fifth Tuesday meeting on the 31st. As you can tell, we spend a lot of this month working on budget. Any public service announcements for anyone, from anyone? Luckily, summer months are a little slower. There was no action necessary from executive session. We did have 2 items on the work session that we're moving to the next meeting, which is the late hour ordinances and video recording and broadcasting of the work session meetings. So there is no other business to come before us. The time is 9:28, and we are adjourned.